Hi, it's Alison from the Law School Toolbox. Today, I'm really excited to have Lindsay Scola, sleep expert and productivity expert, here with us to talk about her new book, AI for ADHD. Welcome, Lindsay.
I'm so happy to be back. This is my third time.
Well, third time's the charm.
That's what they say.
Yeah, your sleep episodes with Lee were super interesting, so I'm sure this will be as well. Many of our listeners and many of our students have ADHD, so I'm super excited to talk about this. Well, to start us off, can you give our listeners some information about your background and your work, just so they have some context here?
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of those gifted and talented kids, which I'm sure there are a lot of us in this space right now, and had a bit of a injustice sensitivity. I organized my first walkout when I was in first grade over unfair treatment in the lunchroom. It was the first, but not the last time my parents came to pick me up.
Nice.
Uh, and I was one of those kids who was like really like when I was really engaged, I talked a lot. Did a lot of daydreaming, did a lot of talking back. So there were a lot of ADHD symptoms there, but that's not really what we looked for women in the 80s and 90s. And, went on to a pretty high powered career in politics. I was an advance person for President and Mrs. Obama. And then when I was in my 30s, I felt like I really, really hit this wall. I'd struggled with a lot of these things, throughout my career, but I felt like I was always able to really like muscle through. And then this brick wall went up in front of me, and I got diagnosed with narcolepsy when I was 35, which is a break in the sleep wake cycle, and went on medication to help with that. And a lot of it was relieved, but there were still things that I thought that the narcolepsy medication should take care of, like getting started on tasks, feeling overwhelmed when I had more than one subject in front of me. And then as time progressed, and when I hit my late 30s, I started to see sort of this like endless web of possibilities. And that would happen whether I was trying to write an email for work or I was trying to figure out what to make for breakfast. And then eventually paralysis just set in. And no matter what I was trying to do, I was stuck on the couch. Now, I might have looked sedentary from the outside, but from the inside, it was like 150 browser tabs were open. I didn't know which one was playing music. And, there was that like frozen, like wheel of death, over everything. And it was just absolutely debilitating. And finally got some answers at 41 that this was ADHD, which gets a lot worse for some of us when we hit perimenopause. And so I've really sort of focused my whole life around trying to make life easier for people by looking at sleep and productivity. And so, even if you don't have ADHD, a lot of the tools that work for those of us with ADHD can help you sort of focus and bring you back to center.
That's awesome. And if people want to learn more about you or learn more about slash get the book, how can they do that?
LindsayScola.com. It is all right there.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's very recently come out. I have read a copy and it's a great book. I will say, every time I get more deeply involved in the ADHD world, I think, you know what? Some of this does not sound that disfamiliar to me. So um, I know you were, diagnosed fairly late in life and fairly recently. I mean, how did you end up with this diagnosis? Like, what prompted you to sort of say, you know what, maybe there is something going on here?
It was this real place of paralysis that I had hit. And, I had been on Ritalin for narcolepsy because there's no novel treatment for narcolepsy. So we end up taking a lot of ADHD stimulants as a way to stay awake because they have a wakefulness component to them. And I had gone sort of up and up on the Ritalin to get that wakefulness component. And I got on a dose that was a bit too high. And I started having these really bad panic attacks. So I went off of the Ritalin and went on to a non ADHD stimulant. So I had some of these symptoms that had potentially been a little bit at bay that I was unaware of. Starting to pop back up in my life. And then a pilot script that I have been working on for a few years. We started working with a producer that suggested adding a neurodivergent character. And we gave a woman in her 30s ADHD. And I thought I was very familiar with ADHD. It's that thing that boys get where they're like bouncing off the walls.
Right.
And then I started researching this in a woman in her 30s. And all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, I'm writing myself. Like she became the easiest character in the script to write because I was just writing me. And that was that was a big
Eye-opening,
aha
I
moment
would imagine.
that something else was going on. My GP agreed that this seemed like a likely thing. Took forever to find a psychologist that took my insurance that would test me for it. The first psychologist I talked to told me she didn't think I had it and I was just going through a cognitive decline in my 40s. And that she'd test me if I wanted to, but I should really start keeping a calendar. And I was like, lady, I have been keeping a calendar since I was a teenager. I kept calendars for, cabinet officials. I was doing advance for the president of the United States. Like, I can watch a calendar. I'm coming to you because I can't figure out what to make breakfast in the morning. And then I sit on my couch in the fetal position. Like, we're not talking about the same thing here. So I finally found a psychologist about 9 months after I started looking, who tested me. And not only did I have ADHD, I was in the 99th percentile because, I really believe in putting my all into things.
Right. You're a
And
big
so
overachiever, I can say.
yeah,
I can
I'm a
tell.
big overachiever. It doesn't matter on what, not so much in school, but now that I understand the ADHD and the narcolepsy thing, I probably could have done a bit better. But getting that insight gave me a ton of aha moments about what was going on in my head. Unfortunately, that did not lay down the tracks to get moving again. Starting was still the hardest thing for me. And so I was getting a lot of tools to figure out why my brain worked the way that it did, deal with emotional dysregulation, but I wasn't moving. And AI became this bridge for me in the how to get back into making things happen and how to start having action, which is what spurred the book AI for ADHD.
Awesome. Well, before we jump into the AI component, tell me a little bit about the ADHD brain. Like, what are some common characteristics that we see?
So it's really a break in executive function. And so if you imagine your brain like an air traffic controller at the airport, where there's like planes in line and it tells the next one to go and then the next one to go and the next one to go. ADHD brains are a little bit like the Newark airport these days. I
I
don't
was
know if
going to
that's
say,
too
does that
soon.
even happen these days? I mean, in
But
theory, where we're directing the
in
planes,
theory,
but
there are air traffic controllers who are telling which plane to go, and then they're looking at the next one, and there is an order for this. Now, with ADHD brains, it's a little bit all over the place, and so we really beat ourselves up for most of our lives about procrastination. But the procrastination isn't a choice in an ADHD brain. It's actually a miswiring. And so most of these things like initiating tasks, planning and organizing, working memory, impulse control, and emotional regulation happen in our prefrontal cortex. Now, for ADHD brains, most anything is going to send that prefrontal cortex up and like you're stuck in your amygdala, which is our fight or flight area. And anything that really involves that prefrontal cortex, we have to do a lot of work to bring it back. Now, with something like emotional regulation, that's tapping into our vagus nerve, which is the thing that runs from our brain down through the back of our neck. It touches our tongue and then into our organs, which, you can put an ice pack on the back of your neck and that's going to bring back that prefrontal cortex. And so for me, it really feels like there's a lot of noise happening, like an old TV static builds up. I have a lot of analogies that I use with this, which I realize are all for people who were born like in the 90s or before. So I'm going to have to come up with some other ones in the book over and over again. I'm like, if you were born, after 1995, like, please stick with me. But on an old school TV, you used to get like static when a channel didn't show up.
yeah.
And that's what it feels like inside my brain. And so once we can bring that prefrontal cortex back, we can start working on the different executive function pieces that need to happen. Another thing that's going on is dopamine. So in neurotypical brains, I say I need to do this thing, and when I finish this thing, I will feel good. That is enough dopamine to make a neurotypical brain work. In an ADHD brain, something that's happening in the future is a little tiny bit of dopamine, and you're hearing a much louder, this is boring, I want to do anything else. That's why people with ADHD might not be able to start something, but the minute you have a deadline looming or like some other attack thing happening, we're like, yes, I've got it. I can like write a dissertation on this in 4 hours overnight, but only if that deadline is right around the corner. And it's another reason why people with ADHD, like, we can manage massive things and be totally calm. Like, I used to plan events for 250,000 people and be cool as a cucumber, but the minute I'm trying to like untangle like a cord for an iPhone, like, I'm ready to pull out my own eyelashes. Like, there is nothing worse for me than trying to put on a sports bra while slightly damp. like that will spin me out of control. But, meanwhile, you're like, go handle this thing where other people are panicking. And I'm like, got you. I'm good. And so
Yeah,
that's that
no,
same thing with the dopamine regulation.
that was interesting to me for two reasons. What you just said is interesting to me because I get like very calm in a crisis situation in a way that actually freaks people out. But also, I recall writing my entire undergraduate honors thesis, which was supposed to be a year-long project, and I didn't pick the topic until spring break. And I did it like nonstop for 3 weeks and got highest honors. And it's things like this that made me think, huh, is that normal? I don't know.
Definitely an ADHD thing. I'm not here to diagnose you. I missed that day at med school,
Yeah,
but
exactly. But I was kind of like, huh, that's curious, isn't it? It's a little abnormal, I think. But
But
yeah, I
yeah, for a
did.
lot of us, it's that getting started is very hard, but we're able to do it once there is the fear that this thing is due, because we also don't want to let anyone down. So,
Right.
you're constantly balancing this, like, I'm going to let everyone in my life down and, like, roam the streets as this like toothless ogre. But, like I can't actually get started on this thing that's not due till
I
next
mean,
week.
for me, it literally became the case. I was not going to graduate because I decided to graduate early, and if I did not finish this project, I was not going to graduate. Um, so I graduated with 2 extra units, I think, in the end, because I finished the project. But yeah, it was definitely a pretty high stakes situation by the time I got started on it.
I feel like that was pretty much every class I took in college,
Yeah.
where it was like, I'm gonna like wait until the absolute last minute to like figure out how to get this thing done. And then like if there was an early morning class, I wouldn't go, and then would like, find the like hot Italian TA, in the statistics lab that could like coach me through like not failing my final exam. So maybe that was a win-win for everyone. But
Yeah. No, I
that was
definitely
definitely
wrote,
how I got through school.
all of my college apps were written the night before, and never proofread and sent in and whatever. I mean, I was good at writing them, but yeah, it was definitely, I couldn't come up with anything to say until the very last minute.
Oh my God, same. Still cannot think of anything to say. I write a weekly newsletter, which like I will have nothing to share until the very last minute where I have too much to share. And then it becomes a task of like, how do I not write 3 hours worth of information every week?
Yeah, Lee and I were doing posts for about.com for a while, and we had to do them monthly. And literally every single month, it was like, okay, we have one day to get these done. Like, what are we going to do? We're just like, why are we doing this to ourselves over and over and over again?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it goes out Tuesday morning, and there is nothing in my brain to say till about 4 p.m. on Monday.
Yeah.
We are recording this on a Monday, and my newsletter is loaded up for tomorrow morning. So I'm really,
Nice.
I'm really quite proud of myself. We're going to celebrate that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. All right. So, what else? We've mentioned executive functioning, dopamine. What else is going on here?
I mean, those are our big things. It really, like with ADHD brains, it really comes back to this executive function and dopamine problem. And so pretty much anything that's happening in this area, whether it's our working memory or it's our creativity, is really functioning back into this spot. And one of those things is really being hypercritical with ourselves, which for me became a serious problem with my writing. I have very bad visual processing. So, like, I don't see spelling errors, I don't see words that are missing in sentences. So, I can read something over and over again and not see that there's like an adverb missing. And then again, like I spell like a second grader. I cannot spell. It has always been a problem for me. And so after, decades of public typos, I got very precious about my writing. And I would actually find myself sort of dumbing sentences down because I was afraid that I was going to use the wrong version of a word.
Hmm.
So like words that I know that there's two versions of it, but I'm always concerned I'm going to like write the wrong one because I don't see it. Like I'd stop doing that. And like over time, that became like a real gap in me trying to share what I had for the world. And I am a writer. Like that is definitely who I am. And so I would like find myself weaving these really beautiful phrases in my head. But by the time I got to my keyboard, I get so stuck on the like, do I start this sentence with and or the? Like, do I start this sentence with once? And then, like, a lot of times with this working memory with ADHD, we have a very hard time finding words. So, it's like that old, again, an analogy for people born before the century, but you used to have the stacks in the library where you'd have to go like find the card catalog for the book that you needed and like scroll through. And then that is what my brain is like all the time. And I'm just like scrolling and looking for the word. And so I would be writing and I'd get stuck on the word I couldn't find. And then I would stop. And
Hmm.
then it would take me hours to maybe come back up with that word. But by that time, I had no idea what I was trying to say.
Right.
And so I was just kind of caught in this vicious cycle. And so that is a working memory problem that's really very common with people with ADHD.
Interesting. Well, tell me a little bit about how you have found ChatGPT or maybe some other AIs helpful in helping you kind of manage some of these things and get stuff done.
Well, so like I was saying, that I was just stuck. And, this combo of being very scared about making typos and just feeling like I couldn't get things started. It was a place where I just didn't know how to put one foot in front of the other. And so things like follow up after meetings wasn't happening. My brain was loaded with creative projects. The thing I always say about ADHD is that it's like trying to catch glitter.
Hmm.
But by the time you have this brilliant idea in the shower, like the number of ideas that die between the shower and the towel, like is endless. And so there were all these ideas that were happening all the time, but the idea that I would actually grab one of them, come up with enough to dos to like actually get the thing started and then get it done was not happening at all. And so I started using ChatGPT as really like a very high end spell check. And then, I was very sort of skeptical about using it for anything else because I think so many of us have seen that LinkedIn post that sounds like it was like written by a robot in
Yeah.
2087 where someone did zero training of it, walked in fresh and was like, write me a post about leadership.
Right.
And if you use these tools in that way, that's what it's going to sound like. And
Totally.
there's none of you in that. I don't want to read that. Nobody else wants to read that. And so it was like, there was this very big mental gap for me about why to even start using these tools. But what I started finding was it did more than just, check my spelling. When I got to that place where I couldn't find the word, I could write a sentence and just like literally write a blank line and then keep writing and have ChatGPT give me suggestions for that word. And then, all of this sort of panic that used to happen with my writing that was causing me to freeze, knowing that I had this sort of digital safety net for myself, allowed me to just sit down and like allow these free flowing thoughts to just hit the paper, because I knew that I had something that I could work with that was going to catch the typos, and that could help me make sense when things were messy. And so I think about it like, acrobats, like they're not going to go up there and do the death defying stunts without knowing that there is a net behind, below them.
Right.
So that's really what ChatGPT became for me, was really this place where I felt like I had freedom with my writing again and I could get these things out of my head without worrying about what they sounded like on the other side. And so it's very much my writing every time I use ChatGPT to help me. It's helping me fix a sentence that doesn't make total sense, or helping me find that word that I was missing, catching those typos. I'm never sitting down from scratch and, without training this thing to say, like, write me a post on leadership. Um, but once I got really comfortable with this writing piece of it, I realized that there was so much more that I could be using it for. And one of those things was, with ADHD, we have a lot of emotional overwhelm when there's more than one thing going on in our head. We don't task switch very well, but all of us have to do lists that involve more than one thing, even if it's beyond work stuff. There's the calling the dentist, which you
Right.
you don't want to do, and then there's the paying the bills that you don't want to do, and then there's the figuring out what you're going to make for food, which you don't want to do. And once you have more than one thing that's building up there and the anxiety around it, the to-do list goes out the door. You order off of your Uber Eats again, um, or you just don't eat at all because that becomes like easier than trying to figure out what to make for dinner. And I realized that I could start using this to like just dump out everything that was going on for me, have it help me put together a to do list that felt manageable, task things out on the level of importance. Because sometimes with ADHD brains, we'll have this moment where, your to do list is like write a book, which we all know doesn't happen in one sitting in one to do
Sure.
list.
Yeah.
So you can like actually like start breaking those things apart. But then you also have this moment where like you have like schedule the dentist appointment, write the email for work, and learn Japanese, and they all have the same importance, and they all need to happen right now. And so, like, I have this like tool that I can work with that's like, you should schedule the dentist today. That bill is not due for 2 more weeks, so like we can sit on that for a minute and like maybe you start looking at Japanese, next week or the week after. But
Right. Or
it,
maybe download Duolingo,
yeah,
check the
let's start
box
with
for
that step.
Japanese and like commit to 5 minutes a day.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the reason that so many of us, it's like we have a new hobby every week, but like we don't actually action on the hobby. It's because there's like dopamine in like downloading Duolingo, but I'm never actually going to open it. I really want someone to start a hobby service for people with ADHD where you can like trade in the expensive equipment that you purchased in that
Yes,
moment that you're really going to do the thing and that you never actually
totally.
used. Because I know my husband and I definitely have a closet full of those things. And so it became this tool where I could actually see that I was dumping things out of my mind, actually making to do lists, and actually sticking with them. And so that's where this whole idea came together, where like ChatGPT or any of the AI services, they all work very similar. ChatGPT is my service of choice. But it's this tool that you can start and actually finish the things that matter to you. And, the idea for me that I would write a book based on an Instagram post that I did last year was like totally crazy to me a year ago. And this has been a real game changer in the way I process and get stuff done. And so I'm so excited to be able to share this with other people.
Yeah, I think the book is really fantastic. One of the things I like about it is it has very specific examples of prompts and sort of how to think about them, but also the nitty gritty of like, you could just go type this in and see what happens. Because I think, I introduced Lee a while ago to AI, and Claude is our new best friend. But she was just like, why would I want, like, no, I don't want to touch this. This stuff is like kind of icky and gross and like it's very tech bro. And we're like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is going to be so life changing for us.
Yeah.
And, that was a while ago. I mean, they've gotten so much better.
No, it got so much better in that the 4 months that I was writing the book, I had to rewrite sections over and over and over again and then finally find ways to say like, this is how this works in theory, because I kept using like very specifics. And by the time I would like edit that section, it had like totally updated again.
Yeah, I mean, even stuff just like you were saying, I could just say, oh, I've got these 5 ingredients and I want to make some stuff, give me, I mean, it used to be really bad at recipes. That was like a running joke in the beginning,
Oh
but
yeah.
I feel like it's gotten way better.
No, it's gotten really good. It's actually been this like thing where, like it gave me this creativity in writing. It's given me this creativity in cooking that I'm really enjoying. I am someone who likes to play and tweak and like I get into that piece of it. But the like when I look at like a 20 thing like recipe that's like going to be all these steps and all these ingredients, I like tune out and it's become too complicated and I can't do it. And so I've enjoyed like finding recipes that look good to me, but maybe are too many steps and asking ChatGPT to make it like a less complicated version of that. And then like giving me some room to tweak. So then I like started like looking at ingredients in my kitchen and being like, oh, what could I do with this? I have an idea to make this type of recipe. I've gotten really into these like pizza bites with mozzarella and tapioca. I'm allergic to gluten. And so it's sort of like that Brazilian like cheesy bread. And like, so I've
Yeah.
been
Oh,
having
yeah.
like all
Those are
these
good.
ideas of different versions I could make with this that I like go into ChatGPT and be like, okay, I've got these things. This feels like a thing that I could do. Like, what part of I'm missing? And that's been like really fun to work with. And it's gotten much, much, much better just in the last couple of months alone on that stuff. But it's actually like allowing me to use all the food in the house. Like, all right, I've got 4 eggs left. I've also got, rice noodles and I've got, a couple of carrots left that I want to use before they go bad. And like helping me come up with a recipe where before it was like, if I don't have a specific recipe that I purchased these for or a plan for them, like it's just, I'm going to end up throwing it out next week.
That's so funny. I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I've got to get eggs. Don't forget to get eggs. And I'm like, oh, it's already on my calendar. I already put that on there. Thanks.
Yes. No, and I really love it for like I'm in the grocery store and I have soy sauce on my list and I don't know where to find soy sauce. Where in the grocery store does soy sauce normally live?
I mean, do
It's
not
very
ask that
helpful.
question about Safeway because God only knows. Like, it is, I swear they put stuff like, I mean, literally people who work there cannot find basic ingredients. And like every time I have to go into Safeway, particularly in California, I'm just like, this store is insane. Like, who designed the layout of this place? Like, stuff is so insane. It's the craziest store I've ever been to
Just want to keep you on your
consistently.
toes.
No, I feel like they do it just so you end up walking around the store like 8 times looking for the soy sauce because you're like, well, I think it would be with Asian, but maybe it's with condiments. I don't know.
Absolutely. And it's been in both places in different stores. Anytime you think you know where it is, it definitely is not.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things like molasses. Like
Oh God. Yeah, I've tried to find molasses before in a grocery store. I
I
don't
keep
think I
buying molasses and then I realize I really hate baking.
I mean, I have multiple sets of molasses in my cabinet, but I mean, I like baking, but you don't use that much molasses. I mean, how often do you really make like ginger snaps?
The once a year where I'm watching the Great British Bake Off and decide
Yeah.
to like make an entire gingerbread city that no one's going to eat.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, I need more blackstrap molasses. And you're like, nobody likes these things. They're kind of gross, actually.
And then it just goes on that shelf where you're like, well, I don't want to get rid of it because I might need it
Right. I don't
again.
want to buy it again. I already bought it.
And see, this is where ChatGPT can come in, where you can actually take a picture of what is on your shelf and like be like, do I have the ingredients to make this thing?
Yeah.
It's gotten so good.
No, I believe that. Well, in the pandemic, I did a huge like kitchen, take everything out and actually label it and put it in places. So now I could tell you exactly where the blackstrap molasses are. I just can't tell you if there's more than one, which there probably is.
Yes, I've started using the label maker. I put like a big label
Oh,
of like the expiration date on top of everything
that's a good idea.
because
Yeah,
there's
I
really
love
nothing
love myself
worse.
a label maker. All
Oh
right,
God, label makers are amazing.
it's really been life changing. Well, let's talk a little bit before we wrap up. Where do you think people can go wrong here, and particularly maybe students? I know a lot of people have a lot of anxiety around kind of what's okay, what's not okay. Like, how should we be thinking about how to use these tools?
I want to think about it as my co-pilot. I think we have to be really careful about over reliance. Like I think a lot about my childhood and before cell phones that I knew my friends' phone numbers. I knew my parents' work phone numbers. I knew the school phone number. I knew the phone number for the local movie theater because that was how we checked the times because
Yeah,
life
and the
was really
weather.
exciting before the internet. Oh yeah, the weather phone number too. And like now I'm hard pressed to remember my husband's, phone number, and that's just because I use it to get the discount at Ralph's. Like my brain doesn't store that information anymore because it doesn't need to. And so it's really exciting, especially with an ADHD brain, when you have these tools that bring this kind of relief and that are changing and growing and we can do so many things with to want to use it for everything. And you have to remember that as soon as you start like turning over your executive function to a tool like this, it becomes harder to access that stuff. So, I use it to write with me. I use it to come up with ideas. I don't ask it to write for me. And there's a big difference there. And, you know, you want to think about it before you go in to be really thoughtful about it. This is not your brain. This is a tool for your brain. Can you access this information in another way? Or is this going to be the best tool to use to help you figure out what to do next? So sometimes with writing, it's not that I go in there and say, write this thing for me, but when I need to come up with an idea for an article or for my newsletter, I ask it to interview me like a podcast host and ask me one question at a time and let me come back with other questions or let me come back with answers and then ask me another question. And that is a way for me to use my brain to still come up with a topic to do for my newsletter or for the article that I'm pitching in a way where I'm still tapping into all the information that's there without asking ChatGPT to give it to me. And I think that that's really important that we like still see these things as a co-pilot and not something that's going to totally take over for us. Because if you are driving and you're only looking at the GPS and you're never looking up at the windshield, you're going to drive into a lake. There is going to
Right.
be a road that is not there, or a road that has moved, or a road that has changed and hasn't been updated in some way. And so we still have to use our brains. We still have to look for the stoplights. We still have to be an active participant in this thing. And then doing it that way, you're going to make sure that you're not asking it to completely do your writing for you. Because there's a absolute big difference, especially for students, of like, help me find this word or help me restructure this sentence in a way that can make more sense versus write this thing for me. Because that's when we get into a really questionable situation about, what who generated the work, and you don't want to put yourself in that situation. But it's absolutely okay to be using it as a tool to get yourself to the place where you're writing your words. No one looks down on someone using a calculator to do a math problem, and I really see these tools in the same way, especially when you're struggling with executive function.
Yeah, I used to say when I learned calculus, I basically forgot arithmetic. So without a calculator for big numbers now, I'd be like, wow, that's really hard.
Yeah, if I'm
But
not like trying to calculate the discount on a sale, that
yeah,
mental math will still kick in there. I do love shopping. The rest of the math skills, which I used to have quite a few, like are totally gone.
yeah,
But like, the calculator is okay. When we're doing the trying to pay our bills and we're going through a spreadsheet and trying to figure out how much we're actually accumulating on something. No one's going to fault you for putting in a function in your spreadsheet to use the arithmetic. And the things that I'm like totally outsource this is okay. I'm terrible at follow up. I love meetings. I love talking to people. I love having new ideas. I am so bad at writing the email afterwards. Like, this is what we talked about. Here's the action items. This is to do list, which all of that's super critical. But now I use an AI note taker called Fathom, and I will take the follow up items. I'll make sure that they're accurate. I'll throw them into ChatGPT. I'll ask it to write a follow up email that sounds like me, and I will send that out right away. Nobody cares if I
no,
spent hours crafting that email or not. They care that they got that information. And
yeah,
so
no,
it's a
yeah.
very big difference between like an original thought that is mine versus like get that email out, use the service.
Yeah, Lee and I are basically definitely big fans now of the please summarize this meeting for us and give us action items. Thanks.
Totally. And that's what these things are great for. And especially if there are things that you get really stuck on, whether that's finding the missing word, whether that's like, help me with this to do list. I have a friend who lives in a studio apartment in San Francisco that needed to get a window replaced. And in the
Oh
studio
God.
apartment, there's things covering
Oh,
everything. She needed a plan to move stuff so that she could have it ready to go and like not interrupt the rest of her life, and took one of the prompts from the book and got the thing done, still had her Sunday evening, and there were no tears involved. And one of the biggest things that I want to convey to people with this book is that there is this big gap for us between the like, don't touch that thing, it's going to write you something that sounds like a robot, and then the prompts that we see on Instagram that are like, act like you're a lawyer with 27 years of experience and also a public relations expert with 15 years of experience and a professional chef who's been working for at least 7 years, and write me this prompt. And you don't actually need that stuff. You can keep playing with prompts and you can add more information to it, but really start very simple. Try one thing at a time, keep building on something. If you're stuck on how to actually prompt ChatGPT, it's very good at answering for you. Like, just write to it like you are asking somebody something, like, can you help me write this prompt that I want to do X, versus trying to get ahead of it in a fancy way. It'll give you the information that it needs. And then the last thing that's super helpful is the screenshot method. I am a very tech savvy person. We're having this conversation because I was an early adopter of AI. Like, tech is not a hard thing for me. But sometimes, if I'm on a new program that I don't know how to master right away, it's like I have never seen a computer screen before. And so I love being able to screenshot what I don't understand, put it in ChatGPT, and ask it to give me very easy instructions for what to do next. The service I used to format my book did a really great job, but it was not intuitive at all. And I feel like it was like every step was like a new screenshot to ChatGPT and be like, okay, why is this formatting this way? Tell me what to do next. And it's very good at that stuff. And that is not outsourcing anything that I need to use to figure out later.
no, that's so interesting. All right, Lindsay, well, we're about out of time here. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I want to encourage people to play. Don't be scared of it. Like, this is something that you can dip a little bit of a toe in at a time. Try one thing and see how it works for you. Make some notes. Try it a little bit different the next day. ADHD brains specifically want to boil the ocean. And we all know that once we try that, like, it's very easy to feel like we failed and walk away from the thing forever. So I have found AI tools incredibly helpful for me and my own professional development. And I hope that they will be for you. But don't feel like you have to bite off everything right now. Like, a little bit at a time goes a very long way.
I think that is very good advice, having seen some of my friends with ADHD go down the rabbit hole on some AI stuff sometimes.
Hyper focus is real.
Yeah. All All right. Well, remind us again how people can find out more about you and get the book.
lindsayscola.com. There is a link to get the book there, or you can find it at Amazon, AI for ADHD. And just about a week or two from now, the audiobook will be out on Audible as well.
Awesome. Are you reading that personally?
I am.
Oh, so cool. All right. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm really excited for people to get the book and, like you said, kind of play with some of these things. So thanks everyone for watching. Please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And check out lawschooltoolbox.com and reach out with any questions.